What's up, Internet? Welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra Hardawar. This week, I'm joined by our podcast producer, Ben Ellman. Hey, Ben.
Hello, how's it going?
Hello, it's going good. Kind of a light ship this week because a lot of people are out. Sherlin's on taking some break, and a lot of people are just busy at Engadget. So it's just going to be us, but we've got a lot of news to dive into. All of Apple's new Macs with M4 chips, the M4 Pro and M4 Max as well, that they all just announced this week. There's a lot of new stuff, and I'm excited to talk about it. As always, folks, though, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes. Drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. And also, you can join us Thursday mornings, typically around 10:45 a.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel for our live stream, so we can do some Q&A. In fact, we'll be including some of those questions and our answers later in this episode as well. So, tune in for that. Ben, you are somebody who I know is fully in the Mac ecosystem, and I also know you're very conscientious.
Unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, or for what you do, you're kind of there, but you're also very conscientious about how you upgrade, right? Because we're dragging you into a modern iPhone and things like that. How did you feel about all these new Macs? Because we have the M4 iMac, we have an adorable new Mac Mini, which is tiny, absolutely tiny, and M4 chips in the MacBook Pros. Is anything particularly compelling to you?
So as I was reading up on all of the stuff they released this week,
Mm-hmm.
I saw the line that said something like the M4, I think it was Pro chip, is now like 3 times faster than the now ancient M1. And
It is that chip is 4 years old now, so
that cut me like a knife. But
yeah.
that is M1 Classic, not M1 Pro.
Yes.
I do believe that my research says that the M1 Pro is only 2 times slower than this new M4 Pro. Please fact check me on this. Send us an email at podcast.
Yeah, I didn't look at that
if I
specific
didn't
thing.
get that right.
I mean, you bring up a good point though, Ben. Be sure to be very clear about what Apple is comparing its devices to, right? Because they often go back to base M1, which was released at the end of 2020. It took a full year before we got the M4 Pro and M4 Max chips, right? Before they really expanded the line.
No, you mean M1
Pro
and M1
Pro and
Max.
M1 Max. Yeah. So remember that there was that time difference when they just dropped the M1 on us, and that was on the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro 13-inch, which was a freaking waste of time, and the Mac Mini, I believe, back then, right? So,
but then this calls back to a bigger contextual question, a bigger contextual God dang it, a bigger contextual question that I have.
Yeah.
Why is Apple doing this? They are just releasing a bunch of stuff kind of quietly. They're putting it on the website. They're sending out like press releases and stuff. Usually they love to bring everyone onto the campus like they did just a couple of months ago and show you nonsense graphs with absolutely no measurements on them saying how much faster this chip is than a chip that they released a few years ago. Is there any chatter on why they're doing it kind of quietly like this?
So I mean, let's talk about what happened this week, right? So they announced last week, or they confirmed that there will be a series of Mac news announcements, but we didn't know if it would just be a live stream. We didn't know if it would just be video recordings and news drops, and that's what it ended up being.
They love a song and dance, and there has been no song and dance.
I mean, I feel it. I'm sure even Apple is tired of hosting these song and dances or media events, and especially for machines that aren't too different than before. The Mac Mini is like a new one. The Mac Mini looks interesting, and I feel like Apple of yore would have done at least a small press event in New York or something to show off that particular piece of hardware. But also, I don't know, man, everyone's tired. I feel like that's what we're feeling right now. Everyone's tired. We are in this election cycle, which is just about to end, and I feel like they kind of got the news out there, right? They produced a couple of videos. They said, hey, I mean, we just announced the M4 chip. Here's the M4 Pro and M4 Max. Here are new systems. You kind of know what the deal is. And I feel like that's pretty much it.
Are you saying that they might be playing some kind of meta game where they're like, you know what, we're not going to ask all these tech journalists to fly out again and eat half to 3/4 of their week
Yeah.
going to hang out with us, because their grumpiness about having to do that when it's getting toward the end of the year and they've got so much else on their plate might bleed into like, man, why did they fly us out for this? Like,
I
yes,
don't know.
they're
I think it's
improvements,
even
but
on their
rah,
end.
rah,
I think
rah.
they are tired too. Like, to produce an event, to coordinate everything for a
Mhm.
launch. It's a lot of work. And I feel like even the people at Apple are like, we don't need to go this hard. Like, they produced a couple of videos, they got the press releases out there. They pre-briefed some press, so I got like a bit of early info on this. I didn't get early info on the iMac. There are reports that they held some sort of hands-on event in LA. At least that's what Mark Gurman said in his newsletter, and I have not seen any of those things out yet. So maybe those hands-ons will drop later today or tomorrow or something.
And to be
Yeah,
fair, the iPhone 16 launch event was on Monday,
yeah,
September 9th, which
yeah.
means that it was just a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I feel like they're done. Like, the major things for Apple are the iPhone event, maybe like a product event early in the year, and then WWDC. So, and the other thing is maybe we are amidst the like delayed launch of Apple Intelligence, right? Which also
Mm.
launched this week across devices with iOS 18.1 and the Mac OS stuff. And I also wonder if Apple's just like tired of answering questions about that. Like, even that was like a muted, hey, here are a few Apple Intelligence features. That new Siri, not here yet. That'll be here soon. And also all this stuff is being slow rolled out. So strategy wise, what we saw Apple do, I think last year, Ben, I think they just like did one day where they posted a video. It was just like, hey, here's all the news. I wonder if this is a new strategy for Apple where they did it throughout the week, little tidbits of news, and we're talking about it throughout the entire week, and they own that week. So I
Same
think there's a
thing
lot of value in that.
as yeah, same thing as not dropping a entire series of a show
Mhm,
all at once, because if you do it weekly like you used to, then people are talking about it week to week. The
mhm.
whole like entertainment news industrial complex can do their recaps and everything.
Exactly, exactly. So let's take a look at what Apple is has launched this week. On Monday, we got the new iMac M4 with brighter colors. I guess you could say. Let's
We
switch over
talking
to
brighter
that.
colors on the front or the back?
On the back, right? There's no real colors on the well, no, you get the front colors too. You have the like little chin on the iMac. But is the thinner design they launched with the M1 chips, now in slightly brighter colors. M4 chip also has, let me just see here. It also has a trend that we started seeing this week, 16 gigabytes of RAM
Mm.
as the base amount without changing the base price.
And
So
who can we thank for that?
I would say AI. I would say Apple Intelligence, and that's also something we've seen throughout this entire year. But I'll get to that. So 1299 for the new M4 iMac, has 16 gigabytes of RAM, has much faster hardware, at least with this M4 chip. Let me see here. There are 4 USB-C ports on the pricier one, with a 10-core CPU and GPU for the M4. I assume you'll get less on the cheaper one. You can upgrade up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. This is a nice system. I like the new iMacs. Have you seen these things, Ben, in action?
Hold on for a second.
Mhm.
You need to restart your camera yet
Oh,
again.
again. Why is it doing that? Let me see here.
Live radio, folks.
Live
Live
radio.
streaming.
Live streaming. Oh, let me switch it on OBS. I feel like it's OBS streaming that tends to do that, or is it Camlink? It's OBS. It's OBS and sometimes other things. Anyway, do you see me now?
Yes.
Okay, we're back. Let
Okay. Yeah, and I
me.
know where we're gonna pick up.
Yeah.
So it's like, have I seen any of the like recent IMAX in action? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. You start.
I'm gonna be straight up with you. I have not seen a iMac in action
Really?
since maybe like before college or something.
Wow.
I'm really like,
You've been
where
in
did
a
they
Mac
go?
store, Ben. Come
Yeah,
on.
okay, yes, I've
Yeah.
been in a Mac store, but, like, I haven't seen them in the wild,
Hmm.
outside of their enclosure for a very long time. For a while, that was, like, the way that you signaled to people, especially in education settings, that your educational institution had money.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and that actually gets to another question of, like, okay, you have these, like, pretty colored anodized aluminum backs for the iMacs, and what do they do in most like non-open
Hmm.
plan office settings? They're going to be pointed for the wall, probably. You're
It
not even going to be
depends.
able to enjoy them.
You get some color on the front. You get
Yeah,
color on the
okay.
base. The bases all have color too. And honestly, a lot of open offices have like they're not pointing at the wall, right? They're cubicles or like mini desks like in the middle of the room and maybe sometimes facing each other. I love this machine. Like Apple just did a great job of making this thing super slim. It is very light. It's easy to move around. You certainly couldn't, mistake it for a laptop or something. But when I reviewed the M1 iMac, was it the M2? Like whatever the last one I reviewed, like I was just so impressed at being able to move that thing around, to just
Yeah,
like
and I
pick it up
remember
and yeah.
portability was part of the original, like, pitch for this, like,
Yeah.
years and years ago.
Yeah, like you could bring it from your den to your, dining room or something and do something with your kids and then bring it back. It's just one cable, you plug it in, you haul over the accessories, and it's not that tough. So I've actually for a while been contemplating just getting an iMac, like one of these new iMacs, and having it be like the family computer, especially for my daughter who's getting
Mhm.
more into computing stuff right now. Like she is big on iPads, she's big on touch screens. Minecraft is like the thing she does, and she has some like iPad reading games and language games and stuff.
So this
But
would be like the living room computer or something.
could be, and we have a space for it, or we move it up to like an upstairs office or something. But I just see the value here, so I think this is a great machine. It's great to have new hardware in here. Even better that it has 16 gigabytes of RAM. And yeah, as you were saying, Ben, I think we really can thank Apple Intelligence for that. Mark Gurman in his last newsletter reported that we've seen Apple Intelligence basically eat up 8 gigabytes of RAM on its own,
Mm.
so because it's running large models, large language models, and different things, and it's no wonder that Microsoft's Copilot Plus PCs, those AI PCs, also require at least 16 gigabytes of RAM. I think what we're seeing is like that is the cost of running these AI models, because what they're doing is basically chewing up large amounts of data or processing it against your current data, and that takes memory. And I think for the longest time, PC makers were like, "Hey, 8 gigabytes, that's fine," right? They kind of drag their heels even moving beyond 4 gigabytes. When we review systems, we always recommend go for at least 16 gigabytes. You don't really want to be opening up your computer and adding in more RAM. And even for newer computers, you can't really do that. You can't do that with Apple's hardware because the RAM is built onto the processor. So this is good. It's a good thing. Even if you don't care about Apple Intelligence, you can thank AI for this at least. So that's the iMac. Any
And
thoughts? Like,
you've
are
been
you
talking
compelled by
about,
this?
like, why
Mhm.
do they even sell an 8 gig RAM version
Yeah.
for a few years now?
Yes.
Because as the IT person, both formerly professionally and IT person of your family,
For life, basically.
you're always on call to be like, "Okay, well, you know what? I think I just want a laptop that, like, can do word processing." And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden somebody's like, "Oh, well, my kid wants to edit a video on it." And that's all it takes
Mhm.
to justify a upgrade to 16 gigs.
Exactly, and I mean, the cost in the past also wasn't that much, but it was still something, and a lot of, like, mainstream buyers just didn't go for it. I think this is a good thing. This is a good thing for everybody, certainly, like, for the people who never made that bump before. When I talked to Apple before, why 8 gigabytes was still the thing they were doing, they kept telling me, like, the M series chips are more memory efficient, which is kind of technically true, so they could maybe stretch 8 gigabytes of RAM more than before. They're also the memory bandwidth was faster than before because the memory chips are right there next to the CPU, and like it can all like be processed much more quickly. But yeah, 16 gigabytes is the standard. And now I'm introducing a new standard, folks. If you're listening to this show, if you like to play games, if you like to edit the occasional video or something, or just like put something up on Instagram or TikTok, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Let's go all in on 32 gigabytes of RAM. How much RAM do you have in your MacBook, Ben?
I told you, 32 gigs,
Yeah.
and that was partially subsidized by COVID stimulus checks.
Well, there is that too. But 32 gigabytes really gives you room to breathe. And if you're working on a large project,
Mhm.
then yeah, that's something that you definitely want. So I'm just putting that out there. Now that 16 gigabytes seems like the baseline standard, most folks will be fine with that. But if you are a prosumer, if you're a creative professional, at least 32 gigabytes now, Mac and PC would be a good
Yeah,
thing.
I feel
Mhm.
like my position on the show is to act as the non-expert, but still smarter than maybe the average user, a little bit
Uh-huh.
smarter than the average user. And so when I was speccing out this laptop, I was thinking, okay, I want the M1 Pro because it's still going to be like
Mhm.
so much of an upgrade over the Intel chip in my 2012 era MacBook Pro. And also, I want to be able to future proof it. So I didn't know what was going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like generative AI, all of that stuff was just getting started around the time when I like finally pushed purchase on this laptop. And I'm really happy that I did some future proofing and went for the 32 gig option.
Definitely. Always future proof. And especially, I think our recommendation was, Ben, that you do that because what you can't do, you can't open up a Mac of any kind now, not a laptop, not a desktop, unless it's a Mac Pro. No, you can't even do it with the Mac Pro because the Mac Pro is also running an M series chip. There is no memory upgrades are not a thing anymore, at least on a self-contained chip like this. So yeah, buy as much as you can. Like, suffer a little bit to put more RAM in there if you have to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about this adorable Mac Mini.
I think the Mac Mini is the star of the week, right? Because this thing, we expected a new Mac Mini. Mark Gurman was reporting like there would be some sort of small redesign, but this is a hell of a redesign. This
This
thing,
is a redesign that is small.
it is small, or small, as internet speak
Oh,
would say it. It's 5 inches by 5 inches. It measures 2 inches tall. If you look at the pictures, like it's just like on somebody's fingertips. It's a small boy, but it's not a weak boy because it has the M4 chip and it also introduced the M4 Pro chip, which is supposed to be really, really fast. And this is a good time to like think about like what the Mac Mini represents too. Like I remember when this thing came out, I was also working in IT around 2005. That original Mac Mini was kind of a slow little box, but it was an interesting idea that not many people were doing. I honestly think you can like really trace the small PC trend back to the Mac Mini because Intel's Nooks and other things people did kind of followed with what that was. Do you have any experience with the Mac Mini, Ben? Any thoughts on like the previous Mac Minis?
the studio that I used to work at on the Upper West Side ran entirely on a Mac Mini.
Amazing. Like you can, and that was like years ago, right? That was like before the M series
Oh
Mac.
yeah, yeah, no. And this was also done by like old school audio engineers
Hmm.
who really value the stability of their like workspaces over
Hmm.
everything. So they are very slow to upgrade, and this thing was still chugging along really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the Mac Mini has been a great thing for a while. The last one, I don't did that one get the M3 chip? I think they had skipped that one. But the last Mac Mini I reviewed where they introduced the Pro chip for the first time, that thing blew me away because that thing was just super fast. It kind of delivered most of what you wanted from a Mac Studio, but it was far cheaper than the Studio. With the Pro chip, it was still more expensive than like the base model. It was like 12.99. Let me look up that review actually.
Plus, it
Yeah.
looks like it's small enough to fit in the enormous pockets of like Jinko jeans that are coming back in style
I
very
don't even think
slowly.
Pro Mac Mini in January of last year.
Devindra, no, you're cutting in and out, I
Perfectly.
think now.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you might need to restart your camera again. Good Lord.
Good Lord, camera. This actually it could be a USB thing because also my USB bus did a weird thing. It's fine.
Oof.
Let's just do this. Let me flop that again. Camera failed to load. I don't even know what that is. I think this is USB drivers screwing up. Let's see. Okay. Or I also think, and folks watching, like I think Elgato's drivers are trash, and this is something I've heard a lot. So this is the Elgato Camlink Mini I'm using for this, and yeah, problems. Okay, let me take that again.
Mark Dell says, it's okay. We blame Dev.
Blame
All
Dev.
right. So,
Just
yeah,
blame
the
me.
last thing that I was talking about that I was able to hear at least
Hmm.
was saying something about the new Mac Mini being able to fit in large baggy jeans. So
Large
go
baggy.
off from
Okay,
there.
I'll go from there. Okay. Honestly, I don't even think you need like big baggy Junko jeans for this thing. I think this thing could fit in like a normal jean pocket, or at least I've been able to fit large packages in mine. I don't know. That's the whole like thing. It's adorably small. I think the Mac Mini has just been something. When I reviewed the M2 Pro Mini last year, early last year, it was January 28th, 2023. I was just super impressed by the M2 Pro chip, and they're kind of doing that again here. I think for most people, this is kind of all the desktop you need, certainly all the Mac desktop you need. It's also like the only new one with an M Pro chip or an M4 chip that you'll be able to buy. The Mac Studio has not been updated yet, so they're projecting like maybe spring for that. But you know what? Like this thing is great. This thing is so tiny, you can put it pretty much anywhere. It also comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM standard. Still starts at $599 with the base
But
M4 chip.
that's
That's pretty
that's
good.
base M4.
That's still pretty
Also,
powerful. Yeah.
let's talk about the ports for a second too.
Uh-huh.
So they're all Thunderbolt now?
They're all the rear ones, I believe, are Thunderbolt because they have the little Thunderbolt picture on them. But
Oh,
let's talk
yes,
about those
okay.
ports because you'll notice something up front that we complained about with the last review. Ports up front.
Yeah.
Last year, if you wanted like a Mac with accessible USB ports up front, you had to get a Mac Studio. That was like one of the big reasons to do it. And it seems like Apple saw that criticism and directly addressed that. So there were two USB-C ports up front. There's also the headphone jack up front. Around the back, the base M4 model gets you Thunderbolt 4 support, which is pretty good. But if you go up to the M4 Pro, you get Thunderbolt 5 support. And that is really interesting. It's the first time we've seen Thunderbolt 5 on Macs. It also is not really on many PC systems yet. I had written up Thunderbolt 5 last year. Let me see here. It delivers up to 3 times the bandwidth of Thunderbolt 3. So that's pretty good. Memory bandwidth should also be much better with the new Thunderbolt. So that's kind of interesting because it does open up the door for better external GPU support. We didn't really like external GPU docks for a while because Thunderbolt 3 and before were just a little slow. Like if you bought a nice GPU, you were not getting all that speed. Now you could potentially do that. I've also seen Apple and others talk about things like AI accelerators, which are just like little GPU boxes basically that just do AI work, not even for like games.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what that opens up. So and that M4 Pro Mac Mini starts at $1399. That's what you'd pay for a decently powerful desktop, you know? So if you
Yeah.
are somebody working in audio or video and you don't need the full capabilities of the Mac Studio, which is
Especially
yeah,
video, because if you need to dump like 120
yeah,
GBps onto a drive or something, that's probably gonna be video. That's probably gonna be like really complicated, like 3D rendering or
yeah.
something. Like that's an enormous amount of data.
That's a ton of data. That's the main thing. And $1399, hey, it is much more expensive than the base model, but that is a really powerful little system. And like, look at how far we've come from like the giant desktop towers. I have a giant desktop tower down here.
A
Um,
pocketable desktop computer. That's nuts.
just it's super great. Like it's one of those things where I've showed this to people and they're like, I don't really need this, but I want to give it a home. I want to find a place for it. Yeah,
Because it looks like a puppy. But
it's adorable.
also, that reminds me a few weeks ago when we were talking off stream, off
Hmm.
podcast, I was saying something about how, like, maybe it would be worth, like, investing in a Mac Mini because it's just like every time I take my laptop out, especially because this is, like, the biggest investment that I think I've ever made.
Hmm.
I have never bought a car, and this thing that I have in front of me right now is the price of, let's say, a kind of decent used car
Sure.
circa 2019, a while ago before the pandemic.
Maybe 2019, but it depends. Like, I mean,
So
how much yeah, go ahead.
every time I take it out in the wild, I'm like, "Oh, I don't like this. This is not a controlled environment like it is in my
Just
house."
I mean,
So I
yeah.
thought it would be nice to get another thing that would just sit on my desk and, like, never actually have to go
Mhm.
out into the elements.
It's also
You
nice to have a
said
failsafe. It's nice to have another system to turn to if your MacBook explodes or won't boot for some reason. Like, I think in general,
I hope not.
if you're a professional that relies on your computers, the best thing you could do is have more than one computer. I think that's like a pretty good sound piece of advice.
But
Uh,
you
yeah.
said that the Mac Mini might end up being underpowered due to, I think, like, inability to get heat out. Can you say more about that?
I mean, I think that was I don't know if I had said that recently though, Ben, because like the M4 the M series chips in general don't get super hot. So I think that's partially why Apple was able to make this thing so much smaller. It is bringing in air, like the intake fans are like on the bottom. You can see some fins there. So it is bringing in air and it's like dealing with heat in some ways. But
How big
yeah,
can the fans actually be on a thing like this, though?
I don't know. I think Apple had the video or had the thing in the actual. Let me see in their launch video. It doesn't need to be a big fan. The main thing is, like, it just needs to fill the bottom of that thing a little bit. I think right here. It just needs
Yeah,
to fill the
because
bottom and, like, pull in enough air to cool down the M series chip, and the M4 can
I'm
be in a
looking
MacBook
forward to
Air.
seeing a teardown of this to
Yeah,
see what the actual diameter of the fan is going to be.
yeah. I mean, it's probably just one big fan, I believe. But, I don't think you need to worry about heat too much because the Apple silicon chips in general don't generate that much heat, so the fact that they can do this, the fact that they can still have MacBook Airs out there that are decently powerful with no fans is like, is a testament to, like, what they've been doing in terms of low
Unless
power
you have
design here.
your desk in front of a window and, like,
Mhm.
sun is coming down directly on it, like you talked about
Maybe.
a while ago
Then
with
you could give your Mac Mini a little home, give it a little, like, sun shield box, as long as there's airflow underneath,
build a
because
little cabana for it.
fit a little cabana, but also make sure there's airflow in that cabana. When I was in IT, like, that was the thing. People would complain, "Oh, my PC is always shutting down. It never seems to boot properly." I'm like, "Well, you have your desktop system in, like, a cubby, in a closet with a closed front door. There's no air coming through, it's like you're choking your computer to death." I think that's less of a problem here. But anyway, I'm really excited about this thing.
So Mark Dell in the
Yeah.
chat says, "No Mac Studio?"
No Mac Studio, not yet. And I think the Mac Studio is still running M2 chips, right? So the thinking now is that there's going to be a spring event where we get more on like M4 for Mac Studio. There's also no MacBook Air announcement yet with M4 chips, but more on that soon. Yeah.
And I guess if you're talking about, like, visual branding or something like that, Apple might be like, "Okay, so now we can say that the
Hmm.
Mac Mini is truly mini," and they might use a similar,
Hmm.
like, slightly updated version of the case for the old Mac Mini on the Mac Studio, and they can say, like, "Okay, now this is, like, your slightly bigger, but way more powerful, like, entertainment production
Maybe.
workstation," or
I
something.
don't I don't think they need to do that at all. Like, the Mac Mini exists to be powerhouse, where you don't have to worry about heat, you don't have to worry about anything, and also they need to have room for all those ports on the Mac Minis or the Mac Studio is what I mean. So the Mac Studio is meant to be the more powerful thing. The thing is nobody is buying the Mac Pro. Like, they updated the Mac Pro, we saw that last year. Nobody can afford that thing. It also functionally is not that much better than the Mac Studio with the MX chips or the Pro chips. So I think the vast majority of creators, unless you're like high-end visual effects people at Disney or something, are running Mac Studios and you need
And in
room.
that
Yeah,
case, you're actually just, like, throwing something to a render farm, probably. You're not doing it
probably.
on your desktop machine.
Probably. I mean, you're probably doing like pre-renders and stuff on your desktop and then throwing it to render farm for final work. Certainly no final jobs are being done on an actual single desktop, but You know, the Mac Studio is a really interesting thing, and I'm wondering if Apple's rethinking like how that thing is going to be positioned because yeah, it's much more expensive. And I think for the vast majority of creatives, like this Mac Mini with the M4 Pro chip, is kind of it. And I don't need it. I certainly don't need it, but I am tempted to like get one and make it my Plex server or something. Like just make it a little headless system that sits somewhere that I can tap
But
into if
also
I need to.
think about it, like, a tech guy like you probably has a lot of pretty decent monitors just
Hmm.
lying around, and so if you're talking about the possibility of getting a iMac to set
Exactly.
up in some public place for Sophia or,
Hmm.
um, both of your kids to use as they grow up, why not actually just get this? Because this is really easy, it's also very
It's true.
portable,
I'm
and
certainly thinking
it's
about that.
less of an investment for you
I
too.
I bought my wife an ultra wide monitor for her like office space years ago, so she uses that occasionally with her laptop. But now there is an open space in our upstairs office area where we could just plug in a Mac Mini and the kids can go. But I can't bring that to like the kitchen, right? Or I can't bring that to downstairs so the kids can do
Yeah.
something where we're all around.
Because
And
it's
that's
not an
where
all-in-one.
it's not an all in one. So that's where like the whole setup issues come in. Anyway, I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing. It is adorable. This is like I think a testament to the whole idea of a small desktop too. Like if you had told me this is what a Mac Mini would look like way back in 2005, 20 almost 20 years ago, I would have been shocked because I was there used to digging into large Dell desktops and things like that. That was my life back then. We have come so far. The only downside is like nothing is upgradable anymore. You can't upgrade the RAM. You can't swap out, your Wi-Fi card if something goes wrong. So that is the
Yeah.
price we pay for all that.
And I think the last thing that came out
Hmm.
during this Mac week was that the AirPods Pro 2 hearing features were finally released. Is that true?
That's one of the things. Yeah, the AirPods Pro 2 hearing features, the hearing test and all that stuff is up there. I believe we have a post on that. So you can check to see if your AirPods think you have hearing issues. I think everybody should do this because we don't think enough about our hearing, like what the status of our actual hearing is. So
The
check this
thing
out.
that I still
Mhm,
wish I got out of Apple's health app, because 'cause I'm checking it all the time just to see how many steps I took. Like,
mhm.
that's my pedometer. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Especially living in New York City, I'm always curious of like, okay, did I do like 15,000 steps, 20,000 steps? Like, that's
Mhm,
a very attainable thing in such a walkable city. But then I see the other thing of like, hearing check or something. This was,
mhm,
an older version of iOS because I have an old phone, as we've talked about. But it's telling me like how loud the things I've been listening to are.
uh-huh,
And it only works when I have my wired ear pods in. I really wish that they could have done something to like make third party
mhm.
Bluetooth earbuds more compatible with the health app, because I am curious how much I'm putting into my ears every day. I
Yeah,
work with these things
yeah,
and I can only get it like during the maybe like 20 minutes to 45 minutes a week I spend using the ear pods for like the best quality phone mic, because
mhm.
sometimes I like to do business calls with that. And I think that honestly, if you're giving someone Bluetooth quality of your voice, that sounds a little bit unprofessional. I want to sound
It's
as
not great.
professional as
It's not great.
possible.
Although I think the AirPods mics, like if you're using an AirPod versus the EarPod versus the wire, it's not a huge difference from what I've
I
seen.
just don't have AirPods. I have Jabra,
You have
suggested by
Jabra.
you.
Yes, I did. That was years ago. That was
Yeah.
certainly years ago. Now is a good time, Ben, to do that upgrade whenever you upgrade your iPhone. You're
Yeah.
in the ecosystem, man. Now this is the thing. Like Apple
Just
can
go
do
for
this.
it.
Apple can do this with AirPods, like to add in all these new features because they have their own wireless chip. They can do things beyond what plain Bluetooth headsets have. Jabra doesn't even exist anymore. Jabra is not making headsets anymore or
Mm,
headphones. It sucks. It sucks that that company has just fully given up on the market.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, I think this is a cool feature. I also this is tempting me as like I want to get like a professional ear cleaning, which I know is a
Oh,
thing and is like the big social media
yep.
hype thing right now. But I
Yep.
kind of want to do that. I'm pretty sure you would probably benefit a lot from that, Ben, because we
Oh,
always
I
have stuff
yeah,
in our
no,
ears. Yeah.
I was told by a ENT that I have that kind of earwax, but we'll move on from that very
Let's
quickly.
move on from the earwax
So,
talk. Also, MacBook
um,
Pro. We should talk about the
oh,
MacBook Pro.
yeah, MacBook Pro. The last thing that I wanted to say about
Mhm,
the hearing features is that I'm still reticent to use it, even if I could, even if I had all the equipment that
mhm.
I needed, just because like getting that assessment and then just having to sit with it might be a little bit scary to me.
That is
Like, I
human
would
psychology.
much
Yeah.
yeah, so I'd much prefer doing
Mhm,
a very similar thing, like, at the combined ENT audiologist
mhm.
place, because then at least I can ask some follow-up questions,
Sure, sure.
rather
But
than having to sit there and feel branded with the, like, "Oh my god, I can't hear the
yeah.
mosquito tone anymore."
Doing it at home may encourage more people to, like, go get their ears checked out. I think that's a big benefit here too. So that's it's gonna be a huge thing. I have not done that test yet, so I need to do that. We should talk about
Okay,
the
so
new
MacBook Pro, yep.
MacBook Pros. They are getting the M4 chips. They're going to get the M4, M4 Pro, and the new M4 Max chip, which was also introduced this week. Apple's not really giving us many details on these chips, by the way. We know the M4 Max is going to be a 16-core CPU. The M4 Pro is a 14-core CPU, 20-core GPU. The plain M chip is available in either 8 or 10 core variations and a 10-core GPU. So that's kind of like how they're scaling it. It's also why like the Mac Mini with the M4 Pro is twice the cost of the base Mac Mini. That's just kind of what you're paying for there. There really aren't any changes, like not many major changes to the new MacBook Pros. They are bringing the space black color, which was on the 16-inch down to the 14-inch now. Everything starts with 16 gigabytes of RAM. Great. That was one of our complaints with the 14-inch MacBook Pro last time I reviewed it. Let me see here. There's also this and the iMac also have a nano texture option, for their screens. And that could be useful for anybody doing work in really bright environments or direct sunlight. So if you're working in the desert and you need to bring your MacBook out there, even with a great high quality screen, there will be glare. It'll be hard to make things out. The nano texture stuff kind of erases a lot of that glare. From what I hear, it also messes with color accuracy and like HDR output. So most people, it would actually be a worse thing for most people. But if you are in that super bright environment, nano texture could be great. The MacBook Pros have 1000 nits of SDR brightness now, up from 600 nits. Also, they both have 12 megapixel center stage webcams. The iMac also has a better webcam. And before they just had like 1080p, very basic 1080p camera. So that's all good thing. Same starting price for the MacBook Pros, $1599 for the 14-inch, $1999 for the M4 Pro model. The 16-inch still starts at $24.99. And also, if you are in a school, take advantage of those education discounts because they shave
Yep.
off like easily
Yep.
$100, and that makes a big difference. Do that. Many schools also offer like ways to pay for things over time, or
Yep.
you could buy it from Apple's store and do the paying over time, and it builds your credit. It's like a thing. I'm not gonna like say go take out a loan on a computer, but if you break up a more expensive device into smaller monthly payments, it hurts a lot less. That's how I freelanced and got decent computers while I was freelancing. So
How
yeah.
long has it been that the MacBook Pro had
Mhm.
1080p cameras? So finally,
Mhm. I
they're
think
getting better.
since I think since I moved to the M1 chip, or since like the M2, when the major MacBook Pro redesign was, that was like late 2021. I believe then they got 1080p cameras, and Apple just never really focused that much on cameras. We've complained about them forever, but now that they have center stage, now that they're doing more processing with the camera stuff, and I think that's a big deal. Now Apple realized like, oh yeah, people need to do a lot more video calls and video conferencing than they used to. The pandemic certainly accelerated that. So there's that whole thing. One thing I do want to mention, the MacBook Airs, the current M2 MacBook Air and the M3 model now also start with 16 gigabytes of RAM. The M2 MacBook Air starts at $999. The M3 model starts at $1099. Just get that. Like, it is worth spending an extra $100 for that. 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's great. Good news.
And it's especially good because that's the computer that I know a lot of people will bring to college. And
Yes.
so it gives you a lot more wiggle room in terms of what you can do on that computer. You don't know what class you're going to end up taking. You
Hmm.
might end up taking a video editing or audio editing class. And I've watched people try to do heavy lift stuff
Oh
on
God.
MacBook Airs, and it's been sad.
It's been, I mean, that stuff has been sad, but I've seen people try to bring like Chromebooks to college. I'm like, I strongly try to get people out of Chromebooks for college stuff. Like, Chromebooks are great for grade school stuff right now. Like in kindergarten, my daughter occasionally messes with a Chromebook in school. That's the level of work you can do with a Chromebook, maybe into high school. But once you're doing college work with like major programs, not so much.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
they're doing it because they think they can get away with a Chromebook. I
Hmm.
think it's because the Chromebooks are cheap.
Oh, most definitely. The Chromebooks, I mean, that's the thing, but I'm at least trying to encourage people, at least get a Windows laptop, at least get something that is a little more flexible and functional. Um, and I think that would make a big difference, especially in college where you don't want to be like 2 or 3 years in, like swapping computers and stuff. You kind of want to have something that lives with you for a while.
Yeah.
And it is your everything when you're in college, right? It's your TV, it's your work machine, it's everything for you. So
Yep.
anyway, good news. We don't know like what Apple Intelligence will do down the line. Like, will these features start to be super memory intensive? Will 16 gigabytes not feel like enough if you're running some crazy AI feature down the line? We don't know. We kind of don't know what any of that stuff is. But hey, for now, good news.
So I do
Mhm.
have some questions from the chat, and
Sure.
chat, now is your time to put in additional questions because this is going to be on the final audio recording, finally. And if you want to participate in chat, remember, stop in on the Engadget YouTube page Thursday mornings. That's US Eastern Time at 10:45. You can also join in. You can maybe have your name said on air as well. So, first one that we have is from Wes Jackson, and this was from early in the segment. And Wes Jackson was saying, like, it's kind of a big yawn for everything. So
Mhm.
maybe that's why they didn't do a song and dance. Maybe that's why they
Kind
didn't
of.
give
I
us
mean,
the
I could
silly
see
graphs.
Apple of yore doing an event, like some gathering for the Mac Mini, because I think the Mac Mini is worth celebrating. Like that is a cool design. It is like an engineering feat that they've been able to make that thing so small. Yeah.
And then Danny Diaz says, I like these mini events. The format allows me to digest the event right from Apple. Otherwise, I just end up seeing the supercuts on YouTube anyway.
Pretty much. I think that's it. And Apple is aware of like people getting tired of the major events too. It's sort of the Marvel problem, sort of the Star Wars problem, right? If you have too much, you dilute the market with things and people are less excited for when you actually have something big that you want them to pay attention to. So I'm sure Apple is well aware of that and changing attention spans. Or maybe someday we'll see something happen entirely in like a short form social media too, like all span through 10 TikTok videos, or 10 YouTube shorts to see this entire announcement. Maybe we'll get there.
Yeah. Buddy305 Love says to me specifically, Ben, HP has been making pocket sized PCs for years.
Sure.
Do
Yes.
you know a model that I can go look up?
Are they any good? Like Intel has been making small NUCs forever. A lot of PC companies have been doing this. I reviewed way back when I first started Engadget, like 2014, 2015. I used to review the Intel, what do they call it? The compute stick, which was just a stick that plugged into your HDMI port, and that's
Mm,
it.
so
That's or
like
no, it was a
so
stick
it's
that
like
you
a
plug the
Roku
monitor
that
into.
sticks into like a TV and you can make a TV a computer then.
Basically, it was a cool thing that they could do, but they gave up on it because it was expensive and nobody was really using it, and you were really limited what you could do with that form factor.
So I'm looking
Yeah.
it up. It's like HP Elite Mini 800 G9 desktop PC. Yes, that looks pretty small. HP
How
Z2
much? How
Mini
much?
G9. So this one, the Elite Mini 800 G9 is $699. That's
Mhm.
almost $700.
Nice.
And then the HP Z2 Mini G9 workstation, that's 1300. So we're getting toward Mac Mini with M4 Pro prices there.
Yeah. Simon B asks a good question. Do we actually know what is Apple Intelligence? Simon B, for the love of God, go to Engadget.com or search Google Engadget.com Apple Intelligence, because we have been writing about this for the past 6 months.
What if
Okay?
they're asking a more conceptual,
Like
like, existential
what
question?
is
What is truth?
what is truth? I mean, like the Apple Intelligence, to recap for everybody, is Apple's spin on all the AI features we've seen coming to PCs and other systems. It's like the Copilot stuff in Windows, but Apple Intelligence specifically is more focused on delivering features in things you're actually using. So if you have a newer iPhone, you get iOS 18.1. Take a look at your notifications and the way like you're, instead of like a wall of like 10 notifications from one of your cameras or something, you will get a condensed thing of like, hey, saw somebody up front for a while, or if you have like a wall of messages or text from your friends, it tries to condense that into a thing that is easily grokkable before diving into like all the
Uh,
individual messages. Yeah.
I don't like that X took Grok away
No,
from
I
the
mean,
old
don't.
school
I mean, don't.
sci-fi fans.
What you do is not even acknowledge what X did. So how about we
Yeah.
just use the word like
Yeah,
we
no, and
normally do? Yeah.
that is Heinlein.
Yes.
That belongs to Heinlein, that belongs to, someone who isn't the owner of Twitter.
Yeah.
So,
And even
Buddy
he's not a great dude. But anyway,
Buddy
that's
30 yeah,
yeah.
Buddy 305 Love says, that I should also check out the Atom Man X7 Ti.
I've seen.
Yeah, this looks pretty cool. I like
Mhm.
the screen on the front that will show you, like, some stats about, I think the temperature and, maybe, like, how
It's adorable.
full the SSD is. Like, yeah, that's cool. I didn't
Let's look
know that
this up.
these existed.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm just the producer. I apologize.
This thing is super cool. But what is the system? Intel Ultra 9. So you're using Intel's graphics. Hit or miss, right? Like hit or miss with what you could do with that. I think what's interesting about the Mac Mini is that it is Apple's GPU stuff has been proven to be pretty good. Like you can run some decent games on that. More games are coming over to Mac. Steam support for some games is there. I'm just more overall impressed by the amount of computing work you could do. But yes, there are PC variants to this too. I don't think as small as the new Mac Mini though, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and then Mark
Yeah.
Dell says, "Oh, my dad is using the AirPods Pro and he's amazed by the hearing aid feature. He says it's going to change his life."
Yes, I've heard that from a bunch of people, and not even older folks. Like there are people in their 20s and 30s who have hearing issues, and like they don't want to be walking around with hearing aids because there's like a social stigma to it, or they don't want to like just be doing that. Now you could just have AirPods in and have some of that help. So that's great.
It's true,
Yeah.
especially when I, like, go to a grocery store or something. I see a lot of people who are working at the grocery store just
Mhm.
have one AirPod in,
That's what I do.
go
It's how
off
I
and listen
live.
to music. Yeah, whatever makes the shift more bearable. But it
Yeah.
can
Go ahead.
also be a sneaky way of being like, "Hey, you know what? I blew out my ears listening to, like, crazy dubstep music or something, and now I
Yeah.
have hearing loss, earlier than I would think."
There's totally that. I've been actually thinking like, man, my life, my high school life would have been so different if I had like wireless earbuds and the ability to just like walk around and have stuff.
Mhm.
Because in high school, like I wish I could have portable music. I wish I could have a like way to shut out part of the world and stuff. That's a whole thing. But man, things are just so much different now. I see a good question from Wes Jackson. Does the power button on the bottom of the Mac Mini bother us, or the fact that the mouse, including the iMac and Mac Mini, still charges on the bottom? I can tell you what Apple thinks about the mouse specifically because people still make fun of it. Whenever I bring this up to an Apple person, they're like, well, you just have to plug it in for 1 minute. You plug it in for 1 minute and you get like tens of hours of charge time. So I think that's their thing. They don't want like the visible, they would rather do that than give you a visible port on the bottom or the back of that thing. I also don't think they've done the work to fully redesign the Magic Mouse, that whole thing. I To a certain extent, I kind of understand that. You know, it's annoying when you lose power in the middle of a work session, but also your Mac will like give you the heads up like, "Hey, you're charging." You don't live at your computer all day, so you could just like as you're walking away plug it in. It would be nice if there was an easier solution to that, but I kind of understand why Apple's just like not too bothered to fix it. The power button on the bottom of the Mac Mini. I saw people talking about that too. It's like on the bottom rear corner instead of like on a port on the back or something, or even directly up front. I know Apple wants to make that thing look clean. I actually don't think that's a big deal because the Magic Keyboard has a power button. And the way most people will be turning on their Mac is by sitting down, hitting the power button that is on their keyboard. The power button on the system itself is sort of like last resort type of thing. If like you have a hard reset you need to do, where you just need to cut power immediately, you're not going to be in daily usage reaching around and tapping that power button. So I think that's like the main thing there. Also, a lot of people don't shut down their Macs fully. Yeah.
I disagree with that. I turn my computer off. I turn my laptop completely off
Ben, you bought the
every
worst
night.
iPhone, so I cannot trust your judgment.
Oh
The
god.
smallest iPhone. No, but you're right. You're right. A lot of people do that too. But the keyboard has the power button. Now,
It
if you're
wasn't the
using
worst iPhone when I bought it. It was a decent iPhone when
it,
I
kind
bought
of
it. It
we
got
kind of
bad.
warned you that that screen would be a problem. Like you
Okay.
would grow out of that. But anyway, if you have a PC keyboard on your Mac Mini, then yeah, you are kind of screwed. Then you are going to be reaching around and like hitting that button. That's a pain, but it's not like the end of the world. That thing is tiny. I don't think you're not like shoving it way back on your desk because you probably want it accessible for the USB port. So it is a choice. Apple's building their systems for people who have Apple accessories. And I think that's mainly what they're thinking about here.
So if you want to also contribute to our live stream, I say at the end of every live stream, it gets cut off from the audio version,
Hmm.
that the live stream makes us smarter. It remembers stuff that we forgot. Remember, you can always tune in on the Engadget YouTube channel or send us an email at podcast@engadget.com.
Yep.
Now, segment break here. I want to go get some water and
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
back in a minute.
Get your stuff, folks. I will just take questions for you guys. I see some good stuff here. MagSafe charging would certainly be nice on the Magic Mouse. It would also be like super over engineered, right? Way back when, I think it was like 2015, 2016, Logitech tried to introduce wireless charging, like a wireless charging pad for some of their mice. And it was expensive. It kind of took up a lot of space, and it also meant you had to use that mouse pad. So I think gamers didn't find it super flexible. People in general don't have a problem. Like occasionally, I have the Logitech MX Master 3 mouse. Once a month, I have to plug this into USB-C, and it's annoying. The port's right on front, but at least I can do it. Um, it's annoying, but it's very really easy to charge. So I think that's why wireless charging never took off. If you want the Magic Mouse to double in price, then yes, wireless charging will be the way Apple does it. Like if you want it to be, I think Apple needs to stop over engineering stuff. The port on the bottom is silly. It's just a thing you could point at and laugh at. I think Apple has done far dumber things than that.
Also, Buddy 305 Love said that his wife really likes Dan to Dan, and it
Dan to
was on
Dan.
your suggestion. So good
Yes,
job.
Dan to Dan. So good. Also, you know what is good? And I'll talk a bit about that too, but the Ranma 1/2 remake on Netflix. I'll talk more about that too. It's good stuff. Let me see. Any other good questions? I agree, Cud. If a charging port at the bottom of the mouse is a bad design, it is a bad design. It's a bad design for charging. I guess it's not a bad design if you want your desk to always look pretty and not look like you're like look at this thing. Look at the Logitech MX Master 3. I love this mouse, but it looks like a freaking stealth fighter. It looks like a thing meant to kill you. And Apple hardware, I have a Magic Mouse somewhere, you know, is trying to look friendly or different. I don't know. Does anybody have any other questions about these Macs? Let us know what you think, especially the Mac Mini. I want to know if people are into it. Good questions. Thank you so much, everybody. Personally, I don't own a Mac specifically, so I use my MacBook Pro for work. I use a variety of like MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs at times for work and writing stuff. If I had a Mac desktop, I probably wouldn't be using the Magic Mouse. I would be using the Magic Trackpad, which is fantastic. And the Magic Trackpad has a power that has like the port right on the back, so you can kind of plug it in when you need to. To me, the whole the touchpad interface for Macs feels so much better than mousing around. So that's just me. Or just don't buy a Magic Mouse. Just don't buy it. You can buy the Magic Keyboard and not the Magic Mouse. Do it however you'd like.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think I want to do the intro for other news.
Yep. Let's. Yeah. Okay. You could go for it.
Okay. So, in other news, the FTC has told Lyft that it needs to tell drivers how much they're actually going to make. I've said a few weeks
What a
ago
concept!
yeah, what a
Amazing.
concept. I said a few weeks ago that I had just finished the what is it? FX adaptation of
Mhm.
Super Pumped, The Battle for Uber.
Right. Right.
Which was Mike Isaac's book about like the founding of Uber.
I forgot they
And
made that. Man.
I
Okay.
mean, it's just because I'm a big JGL head. I'm sorry. I watched Angels in the Outfield literally until the VHS tape broke.
I've got thoughts about JGL and his current career trajectory, but yes. Okay.
It seems like he's a decent guy, though.
Mhm.
Whatever. He might not be making the best decisions,
We were
but
referring to
that
Joseph
is
Gordon-Levitt, kids, if
yes,
you were
Joseph
confused.
Gordon-Levitt. So there was a B plot in the series
Yeah.
where Austin Geit, who was responsible for recruiting the majority of like the first wave of drivers for Uber, was promising up and down that like all these black car drivers were going
Mhm.
to be making something like double or triple what they were making just doing traditional ride hailing or
Yeah.
working for, as a contractor for a company. And the B plot also went through, this very humble driver saying, oh, well, I want to make more money for my family. Oh, excuse me.
Mhm.
Oh, that is kind of gross. Sorry. So he's like,
Okay.
I want to make more money for my family, and like tracking how Uber's promise did not actually come true for him, or it only
Mhm.
existed for a few months. So I
Mhm.
think this is a fantastic step forward. It's definitely a bit more regulation. So if you don't like regulation, argue with the wall, maybe. I
Argue with
just
the
want
wall.
people to like actually be able to plan their finances. And the fact that these like rideshare services, really everything as a service
Yeah.
sort of companies play a shell game with people who are otherwise low wage workers. That's not great.
It's not great, and also because taxi driving used to be a pretty reliable job for a lot of people, especially, like, immigrants moving to America, like, There are the jokes about immigrant taxi drivers, but it is a thing that people have done in New York. Like you work towards paying off like a taxi medallion, right? Like you would buying a house. That's just an investment for you, basically. So it's I've hated what these companies have all done. Like I don't know if you remember this, Ben. You remember the era before Uber and Lyft and everything? New York used to have Halo, which I think was a London-based startup. There used to be like a couple different ones. If you're in New York, you can also hail normal cabs with the Curb app. I really like the Curb app actually. Um, but
I
before
still
then,
people seeing use I still see people using their hands sometimes too.
I use my using your hand. New York, that's a great thing. It doesn't work everywhere. I've learned in Las Vegas, you cannot hail a taxi
Mm.
because you have to do it at the hotel bases, basically, and taxi drivers get annoyed picking up anywhere else. But yes, there used to be old ways of doing it. When these companies came in, like all I saw from Uber and Lyft was just like pure bullshit to like get themselves into markets and everything. New York, because it had such a strong taxi, it has a taxi commission, it has a strong taxi industry. They were able to resist. So you don't get Ubers with normal people driving in New York. New York Uber drivers, Uber and Lyft drivers have to be like still technically limousine drivers. That's kind of the whole deal. Something I also learned when I moved away from New York, you get bad drivers. You get really bad drivers on Uber and Lyft because normal people just driving around in their cars, not fun, not great. Anyway, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You also want to bring up this thing about OpenAI, Ben. I know you were interested in this. OpenAI's
Yeah,
Whisper.
because it's something that we use to transcribe the podcast now. I
Mhm,
just let my Otter subscription lapse because I was using it for another client. I was using it, 5 or 6 times a week.
mhm,
So I figured, okay, yeah, I can take this off of my taxes. It's like $100 a year or
mhm.
something. Now I'm not working with those folks anymore. So I don't know if I can really justify the
Sure,
expense
sure.
of not using this 5 or 6 times a week. So I'm like, okay, what else am I going to do? LLMs have gotten so much better for transcription, especially.
Mhm,
So let's go off and try this. I got Mac Whisper
mhm.
a while ago, and it's good. It needs some work.
I mean, because
The
Mac
UI
Whisper,
needs some work, especially.
I love Mac Whisper. We talked about it, but that essentially runs the Whisper, the OpenAI Whisper model on your system. So it
Yes.
takes forever. It takes like, especially on an M1 system, Ben, it probably takes you like what, half an hour to an hour to like
Mm,
transcribe a
y
podcast or something.
no, not really. I mean, I had 2 hours
Yeah.
of tape from, like, a bunch of different speakers. It didn't have diarization, which
Hmm.
is the fancy way of saying, like, differentiation of speakers.
Which is essential. If you're doing transcript, if you want a transcription tool, it has to kind of do that. So that's
There
why I
were
stopped. Yeah.
so many different voices in this, though. This is something that I recorded in, like, a big,
Hmm.
busy, New York City park. I'm hanging out with this guy who, he's doing an art project.
Hmm.
I'll talk more about it once the piece is actually out. It's probably not gonna run anywhere other than, my personal portfolio. But this is a guy who is kind of running a stand, so
Hmm.
people come up to him, and so there are so many different speakers. I really wish that there were additional speakers or that you could differentiate between speakers. But the thing that I haven't seen that is something that Reuters was talking about just at the end of last week is that OpenAI's Whisper has a tendency to just make stuff up whole cloth as if it's trying to infer maybe some garbled speech or something like that, and
Hmm.
then it will just like kind of free associate. And the problem is that people are using this in hospitals.
Yeah.
That's a situation where you really can't have something just like go off all crazy, especially because if it goes off all crazy and it sounds a little scary or something, like I saw some examples in
Hmm.
the Associated Press, not
Hmm.
Reuters. Reuters would get mad at me for that. The
Yeah.
AP article saying that sometimes it got a little bit scary. It said, stuff about like violence and knives and things like that. Hospitals have psych wards in them.
Hmm.
Like it's very possible that you could have someone talking about that. And if you had some kind of, I don't know, like automatic flagging tool for whether or not to get someone a psych eval,
Mhm.
that would be a psych eval based on OpenAI's free association. But we're
This
getting ahead of
it's a
ourselves.
sensitive data environment. And I think that's
Yes.
the main thing. So like, hey, I use we've talked about using the tool Descript. I use them for like producing our transcriptions, and I go in and like tweak stuff like people's names and like hardware names it doesn't get right. I use that also for producing the social media videos and the audiograms we put out. We are not, we're just a couple of people talking about technology, and I do look over the transcripts and I tweak things as I need to. I've basically been like, I'm okay if a couple words or some things are kind of wrong, because the overall transcript is still a useful service to people who need it. And it's also a useful service to like search engines and things like that. But in the medical environment, or if it's like sensitive legal information, like I would be really careful about using any of these AI tools. Yeah.
Yeah, my silly little podcasts, they can be a little bit wrong. That's
Uh-huh.
fine. But don't make mistakes in a medical context.
Please don't.
So the politicians are live streaming once again. What do you have to say about that, Devindra?
I do have to say about that. Let's flip to that video, because what's happening, and I was so excited about this. First of all, I was really excited when the news dropped that Kamala Harris's VP candidate, her VP Tim Walz is a Dreamcast fan, is a Crazy Taxi fan. So over the weekend, I believe Tim Walz and AOC did a Crazy Taxi live stream, and it just brought back all the joy. It's also, I don't think AOC has seen Crazy Taxi before, so it's also introducing a new person into this world, and
That's
the
surprising to me.
yeah, just like the insanity of Crazy Taxi. I love this game. I love the Dreamcast. I've talked about how much I love the Dreamcast, but Tim Walz just has like, yeah, pure love for it. This was fun to see, and it was certainly a much more fun thing to talk about rather than like the Nazi rally that happened in New York, where things were not so great coming out of that. So here's what I'm gonna do, and to listeners to this podcast, all I can tell you is vote. This is a pretty important election for America, for the future of this country. So if you care about any of this stuff, you should probably vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but read things. Please read the news. Please read about like what is actually happening. I will fully endorse on my end. Like I already voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I put in my early voting in Georgia because I didn't want like any of the weird like ballot mess that's going to happen. Like this next week is going to be a mess in
Yeah.
in this state. In a lot of other states, we've already seen ballot boxes being set on fire. We've seen people intimidating others at voting, at polling booths. Not great. Just it's going to be a really tough week. Please vote, because yeah, this country depends on it. Ben, you want to add anything there?
Only that Tim Walz would probably love The Simpsons Hit and Run.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He would totally love it. I mean, he would be what the real baller move would be like if Tim Walz just pulled out his like 1,000 hour Fantasy Star Online character, because the
Mm,
true Dreamcast heads know the Fantasy Star Online was one of the pioneering games for like console RPGs. It was barely an MMO, but on consoles we didn't really have much, and the fact that you could plug in a 33.6 modem or a 56K modem on a Dreamcast and like play an RPG over phone lines with people from your couch blew me the hell away. So, I will always love
he's
you,
most
Dreamcast.
likely to have fantasy college football, I think, rather than
Yeah.
Fantasy Star
I mean,
Online.
weren't they playing Madden or something too? They were playing a football game as
Of
well. So,
course. Of
of
course.
course, of course.
So the age of ice cream machine broke is
Uh-huh.
finally over
Well, I mean, ideally, we think it could be. Uh,
because
mhm.
McDonald's can finally service their own machines. They can finally get around the hardware locks.
On the
This is
McFlurry
actually
machine
no, but this is
specifically.
actually yes. Okay,
Mhm.
this is a silly way of talking about right to repair, though.
Uh-huh.
It's like finally the FTC was like, you know what? It is really dumb that you can only have one approved technician come and like fix something
Mhm.
that is hardware locked in this way. We don't have enough technicians. And if it's hardware locked, you can also like charge exorbitant amounts of money. So if you're annoyed about, the right to repair issues on your phones, computers, and laptops, if you're annoyed at Apple, especially because so many people are like, "Oh my God, I would never get anything in the Apple ecosystem because of how difficult it is to fix,"
Mhm.
then you are already a right to repair advocate,
Yeah.
and you should be throwing your votes behind maybe an administration that supports right to repair too.
Or workers or things like
Yeah.
that. Specifically, the mystery behind why McFlurry machines break down all the time is that being McDonald's corporate has to send somebody, like an official repair person, to fix that machine at every
Exactly.
franchise.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it is ends up being a game of you can't put out enough fires because everybody loves the McFlurries, so they're going to be used a lot, which means that the moving parts are going to end up getting messed up.
Mhm.
And the next thing we need to do is the same thing, but for John Deere tractors.
Mhm.
They're
I mean,
right to repair
absolutely.
all the way down.
Right to repair all the way down. I mean, we saw a bunch of stories. Farmers are like hacking their tractors to fix them. That is the way things should be. And it's funny, like, to talk about this now too, because we were also talking about, like, man, that Mac Mini sure is adorable and cute. You got nothing to repair there, buddy. Like, it's all like one little chip and like a circuit board, and like nothing is fully removable, and you can't really do much. You can open it up, but there's nothing much that you can do as a consumer. So that is the price we pay for like cute, well, pretty looking electronics. We kind of miss that. Kind of miss that sometimes, and sometimes you need to just dive in and fix a big machine. So hopefully this will mean more working McFlurries. Are you a big McFlurry consumer, Ben?
I was.
Mm-hmm.
I have changed a bit. Um, Actually, within the last few years, I've
Mm-hmm.
started thinking like, man, I gotta change my relationship with food.
Yeah,
Not that it was bad or anything. It's just like I'm the only one looking out for myself.
absolutely. Also,
Nobody
you're
else is
you're getting
telling me
older,
what to
Ben.
eat. Yeah,
You're
no,
gonna
I
feel it.
I literally am. Yes.
You're
So
feeling it. We are watching here, by the way, the iFixit video about why the McFlurry machines are always broken and how to fix them. So thank you to iFixit for always. Thank you for your service, iFixit. I've always wondered what's going on back there. My kids, like, we try to avoid McDonald's, honestly, but I don't have any major qualms around it. But I think we went
mm.
on vacation last year at some point. The McDonald's was like the only thing at the rest stop to go to, and now my daughter calls it a happy dinner. All she wants is a happy dinner once in a while, and that's great. That's great. She doesn't demand it. Honestly, I wish she would demand Happy Meals more often, because what she does demand instead is like the stuff I've started giving her. Like, she really likes pho. She really likes poke.
That's so
These
expensive.
kids.
Yeah, that's expensive and difficult to do at home.
That's expensive. And then, like, yeah, I could get that delivery, $20 for a single, thing for
Yeah,
her. Also, I don't
yeah.
know what happened to pho, but at least out here in Georgia, we have a huge immigrant population, a lot of great food from all across Asia. But goddamn, everything is expensive. Pad Thai, $20.
Yeah,
$20
yeah.
before delivery fees. Pad Thai is it should be a $5 dish that you get really easily at a local restaurant or something. But anyway, that's the news. Thank you. Hopefully the McFlurries will feel better. I want to shout out a couple things that we just covered here at Engadget. First of all, we have a review of the Kindle Colorsoft. Valentina Palladino, our deputy editor of commerce and buying advice, covered that for us. She calls it the missing link in Amazon's e-reader lineup. Score of 84. She really likes it, and this thing looks cool. um we were doing some comparisons, like in Slack. We were comparing it to like the Kobo color reader, and I think we all noticed that the Kobo's color screen looks a little more saturated, like the colors are just punchier. But Valentina still likes this, and if you're in the Kindle ecosystem, I can't blame you if all your books and your entire library is there. This is certainly a good option. I have been a Kindle user for a long time. Last year, I picked up a Kobo e-reader just to like start separating myself from Amazon. And you know what's really tough is having multiple e-readers, because then it's like, oh, my
Oh,
other
no.
library
Tell
is
us
over
more about
there.
your first world
Yeah,
problems.
first world problems. But now it's a really annoying thing. Like, this is how it works. This is how like the lock-in happens, is that you can't just bring your Amazon library to Kobo or something. You can put some of those books on your computer and do the whatever stripping it is to like make it an EPUB book and then get that over to Kobo, but man, it's just a pain. So I don't know. I'm doing new books on Kobo. Old books I still haven't read are still on my Kindle. The Colorsoft looks very cool. I think that's a big takeaway we can have here. I still don't know if like a Kindle. I don't know if I need a color e-reader. I would love like a bigger color thing that would be better for comics. But tablet screens have gotten so good, especially with OLED. Like OLED, I'm just such a big OLED fan. I think that's the main thing for me. We also have a review of the DJI Action Osmo Action 5 Pro from Mr. Steve Dent. He says it's finally a worthy GoPro rival, so that's a good thing. Are you an action camera fan, Ben?
I'd like to be. I'd
Yeah,
like to like have a little drone just to play around with. Recently, the media production game has not been um, economically fruitful for me,
yeah.
so yeah, I've been focused on saving my money.
Save your money. I mean, for you, I would more recommend the DJI Osmo Pocket, which is the portable little camera we use because you may occasionally be doing video production stuff.
Yep.
But I
Yeah.
like an action camera. I bought a GoPro like a couple of years ago, and I swear to God, I have not actually been able to use it for anything. It's very much an aspirational device. We do have a small drone, and you know what the drone does? It flies up to my roof and makes sure there are no more holes in my roof or chimney. Like it's the drone goes
That's
places where
actually a
nobody can go.
great way to inspect your own roof. I've never
Yes,
thought about that.
or my chimney. A lot of like roofing companies will just send a drone up there to like do the
Wow.
inspection. Yeah,
Yeah, that's really smart. It's a way to not get on a ladder because so many
exactly.
surgeons say, "Don't get on a ladder
Don't
for
get
the
on
love
a
of
ladder.
God."
And also it's super easy. It like takes, a couple minutes to throw a drone up there and you have a high quality camera and a real time feed and all that stuff. So
That
anyway,
seems like the sort of thing that homeowners insurance should be covering sometime soon.
it's a whole thing, Ben. Yes, yes. It does sort of cover it. What roofers do is that they go around neighborhoods and like, hey, your roof's looking kind of old. We can help you get it covered under insurance. Like it's a
They just
whole
fly a drone around. They
they just
just
fly
park
well,
their
they're like,
car
"Well,
and they're like,
we're helping your neighbors, and we will throw the drone up there, and, they will work to make sure your insurance will pay for the new roof," which can
Mm,
cost, like, $20,000 or so, but
yeah.
doing it through insurance, it's, like, maybe $1,000 or whatever for your copay or 2,000, so, yeah. Yes. Any yes to action cameras. Ben, I feel like, first of all, in terms of what we're working on, I'm working on a lot of stuff. Apple just announced 4 different products. Somebody's gonna have to review those products. So some of us are gonna be heads, I'm basically neck deep in a lot of like testing of things right now. There's a new game console coming soon. We're testing that. We're reviewing that. All these things are happening all at once. Anything you want to shout out on your end, Ben?
Let's just move on to picks.
Let's move on to picks. What do you got?
It's over the garden wall season, everybody.
Yay.
It's the 10-year anniversary. They did a 10-year anniversary concert in LA, the blasting company that did
Mhm.
all of the music for Over the Garden Wall. Elijah Wood was there. A lot of the original voices were there. Unfortunately, let me look this up.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Jack Jones.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Jack Jones, who is the singing voice of the frog
Yes.
and also just sang a couple of the other marquee songs for Over the Garden Wall.
Mhm.
Um, he was 89 when he died. So
Oh.
he lived a good long life.
Yeah.
And you could kind of tell that this was being sung by like a kind of gentle voiced old man too.
Yeah.
He had that sweetness in his voice. So
Mhm.
if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is a mini series from Cartoon Network that premiered in 2014.
Mhm.
It is a little bit of just a send up to the holiday spooky season, fall season. It is also an adaptation of Dante's Inferno.
Oh,
It
yes, it is.
is
There's also a lot of David the Gnome in there. I mean, come on, I love David the Gnome. Yeah.
yeah, it is also it feels very, old American and European like mythological.
Mhm.
Um and it's also like a huge homage to why did I say that weird?
I
It's
don't
a
know.
homage
Homage.
to classic animation. So this is the animation of like the 1930s or so.
Mhm.
There is one episode that is like really relies on rubber hose animation.
Yeah. There's a lot of like
It's
Fleischer looking stuff in here. Yeah.
Yep, it's about two brothers who get lost in the woods, and
Hmm.
their entire goal is to get out.
Yeah.
And so, if you know about basic mythology and a little bit about Dante's Inferno, you know what's going to happen. They get chased around by spooky stuff. They meet different crazy characters. It has become a really like classic rewatch for a lot of people. I don't know how many other things have been like canonized like Over the Garden Wall has in like the last 15 years or so.
It it's very it's not like a hugely popular thing, but it has like basically garnered like a huge cult audience, which is I think kind of the
Yep.
perfect thing for this. So yeah, good show. Good show. Check it out. It was also like unavailable to stream for a long time too, so I'm happy to see like that's a big thing. Um Let me just I'm looking at the thing here. Yeah, we're not gonna play this trailer. I want to shout out the Netflix remake of Ranma One Half, which is remember that anime series? Ranma was like a classic 80s anime series about a boy who turns into a girl when he gets hit with water and his father turns into a panda. It's comedy, kind of a romantic comedy, a situational comedy, also action series at time because there was always a lot of good fighting. It's been remade for Netflix, basically following, at least from what I've seen the first couple episodes, kind of follows the exact same path as the original, but the animation is nice and clean. It's still a fun watch, and it's cozy anime. Like that is the sort of thing where I'm just like I could just sit down, really enjoy this J-pop intro song, the really soothing ending song. It's funny. The action's pretty good too. Like it just looks cool. So I want to shout that out. Like for anime fans, if you've not seen Ranma before, you can see the original. That is up on Crunchyroll right now. So that's kind of a thing. It's gonna load my Netflix. Don't load my Netflix on YouTube, please. Do not do that. But yeah, it's the animation's good. I think that's a good thing, especially what happened to Uzumaki, which had a good first episode, and then the animation just went super downhill after that. So Round One Half is my recommendation, especially if you checked out Dan to Dan, like I recommended. It's good stuff. Like I
Very different tonally, but good.
very different tonally, but also I feel like a good chaser. Like Down to Down is pure. It's just like a little like crazy mad, crazy mad anime, and Ranma is much more chill, even though it's about like much more fantastical stuff at times. So good stuff. I think that's it for the episode, Ben.
Yep. So thanks everybody for listening. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by me, Ben Ellman. You can find Devindra online
At Devindra on Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, everywhere, and I podcast about movies and TV at the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com.
You can find me online at I don't know, just listen to your
Just
router
wherever.
and I might be whispering to you.
Hmm.
Don't try to contact me. No, I'm just kidding. If you want to see my old tweets, find me on Twitter, Hey Bellman, HEYBELLMAN. Email us at podcast@engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. That includes Spotify.
Thanks, folks. We're out. All right, chat. How are we
Dunzo.
doing?
There we go.
I see chat on the
I've been
stream.
looking for a new anime to watch, and I've actually heard a lot about Ranma,
Yeah.
but haven't seen it. So maybe this is my call to do it.
It's fun. I think it's probably a little more politically correct than the 80s one was, because like a lot of anime from the 80s, it's like watching Dragon Ball with my daughter. It's like that's
Yeah,
just weird and
no,
perverted sometimes, you know.
Master Roshi.
Master Roshi literally is just a walking,
He's a walking HR meeting.
And also like Goku's whole thing, like he's an innocent boy who doesn't understand how private parts work. So that's Goku, But my daughter loves like the rest of like the
Hey,
Dragon
he's
Ball
an
stuff.
alien. How is he supposed to understand?
He was raised by his grandfather in the middle of the woods. He's never seen a girl before. It's all new to him. Totally great. Wes Jackson says the Lincoln Lawyer is back. I like the Lincoln Lawyer. It's a good show. Gustavo Romo says smell my finger. I will not.
No, absolutely not.
Mark Dell, the Dreamcast modem Raspberry Pi thing is called the Dream Pi. If anybody wants to get their old Dreamcast online, play some Fantasy Star Online, that's a good idea. You can also do just like classic Fantasy Star Online stuff on a computer, on a gaming system. I think that do they call that Blue or something? There are fan servers that you could go in and play. I love that game so much.
I used to play Halo 2 on a fan server, I think.
Yeah, Halo 2 was a good one. Beginning of good multiplayer stuff.
I
Anything else
do
for chat?
wonder
Mhm.
how many people who were, big anime fans in the 80s watched Ranma 1.5,
A
and
ton.
it
Mhm.
gave them some interesting thoughts, feelings, and ideas
Mhm.
about how much they wish that maybe if they were splashed with water, they could get change into a girl too.
There's a lot about anime that was not super progressive in the '80s, and then a lot is like, "Oh, really interesting what you're doing." Like,
Well, I
what was
think
yeah.
this is actually a case where
Yes.
it kind of, like, comes all the way
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
where it came from, like, a kind of, like, middle school place of, like, "What if you could turn into a girl? Hee 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 hee."
Mhm.
But then it's possible that, some people thought about their identities after
That's
watching
definitely I
that.
mean, the Ranma creator is a woman, Rumiko Takahashi, and I think, like,
Mm.
there was one way for her to, like, "Hey, what if a boy could have the perspective of a girl?" And I think Ranma, the
Okay.
original show, always kinda had that. It wasn't, like, purely perverse or anything. Similarly, I was a big Sailor Moon fan as a kid, as a teenager, and, like, that show has a wonderful mythology, but also, like, really does, do a lot of interesting things. Like, at least when it comes to, like, it's telling things about, like, the, perspective of a girl and women that we don't normally see in shows, and I always appreciated that, while also being, like, a big Dragon Ball Z fan. Anime is good, folks. Terminator Animate, Mark Dell. I've been watching that. Terminator Zero is very good. It is, in fact, one thing I've noticed is that Terminator, basically since Terminator 2, 3, all the crappy ones, I really like Dark Fate, so I don't think that one's bad, but they have basically just turned into action movies. The first Terminator is a horror movie. It is about an unstoppable killer trying to, destroy, to murder a woman, because of, the future and everything. Terminator 2 has a lot of really scary elements, like, is more a thriller than an action movie at times. And Terminator Zero on Netflix really goes back to, like, the horror roots. Like, it is a
Mm.
scary Terminator. It's set in Japan. It is another Terminator coming back to stop another scientist who's creating a good AI to fight the potential bad AI, because the scientist, kind of knows what Skynet will do. So it's trying to make an alternative to Skynet. It's a whole thing.
And
Yeah.
Terminator gave us most of the language that we use when we are talking about, malevolent AGI. It's true.
It's true. I mean, like, yeah, Cameron cemented it in all of us. It was in science fiction before, like Asimov kind of wrote about some of that stuff. But yeah, Terminator was the thing that made it mainstream, I'd say. Mhm.
Buddy305 Love says Ranma wasn't hardcore, so I skipped it back then. I hope that you can give it another shot because I
Hardcore.
understand, when you were in high school or earlier that, yeah, you
Yeah.
felt like you were very much defined by what you watched and you wanted to show off that you were tough and stuff.
Mhm.
But now is the time to allow yourself joy.
Allow yourself joy. Ranma was great. Sailor Moon was great, and all those reboots have been good. The Cyberpunk Edge Runners anime, I see Wes Jackson also bring up. That was really good. Great animation in this and the Ranma one. The Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. I see somebody bring up. Mark Dell brought up Summer Glau. Yes, that was a good show. That was a fantastic show. Also had really scary parts too.
What happened to Summer Glau?
I think she was just like tired of the fans. Fandom has ruined
Yeah.
a lot of things in this industry, but yeah, she was great, Miss Summer Glau. I think we can wrap, folks. Thank you so
Yep.
much for joining us for our like rambling session about the new Macs. We will try to get like maybe there will be more final thoughts on Macs by next week, but we'll see how everything goes. I think you can roll it, Ben. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for watching. Like I said before, I gave you a little preview at the end of the first segment that you really do make the show better. You remember stuff that we forgot. We wouldn't have talked about HP's mini PCs if it weren't for you. That was an interesting side conversation. So please come back, send us an email at podcast@engadget.com. The video comes to you via just the two of us. I was doing a little bit of camera switching when I wasn't talking. Devindra was doing OBS when his camera wasn't freezing, and you were the people making You are giving us the heart
Thanks.
of the show. So
Thank
thank
you all.
you, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week. I want to address one thing real quick because
What?
I saw a take from Jared the Geek who says Terminator 2 is not very good if you watch it with an objective eye. The effects are great, but the dialogue is just terrible. I agree. James Cameron is not a dialogue man, but he is an idea man. And I think the ideas in Terminator 2 still resonate. Like, yeah, the everything about that movie. I saw the 3D remake back in theaters a little while back, and it's just so visceral. Like so much about it. The actual logic of it, how terrifying it can be at times, and all the action is fantastic. So yeah, I look over the like clunky dialogue, and Eddie Furlong is not great, but he is probably great as that particular role. So Terminator 2, Stone Cold classic.
You got movie nerd sniped. Let's end the stream.
Let's
Bye,
go.
everybody.
Later, folks. Bye.